Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing a guide for Rakan. So special thanks to Ragin Cajunification, the tongue twister, for donating for this guide. So I really appreciate it. Thank you. And we're going to break this up into several sections. So first up, we're going to have why pick Rakan in general. So we're going to talk about his overall position in the meta, I think, his abilities, how they work, how you can optimize them, the skill order you should get. We'll talk about his strengths, his weaknesses. We'll talk about really good matchups, bad matchups for him. We'll talk about recommended items, runes, masteries, and then we'll go down and we'll talk about how to lane with him and how to team fight with him. And I have some footage that we'll review for that. And then I'll talk about if you want to sponsor a guide or you would like a coaching session, I'll talk about how you can do that at the end of the video as well. And you can find all this information in the description also. You can also find access to this Google Doc in the description. So if you want to follow along or you don't have time to watch the whole thing, then you can always go into the Google Doc and just kind of get the TLDR version. And there's also going to be great timestamps in the description as well so that you can jump around to different sections that you might find most useful if you don't have time to watch the whole thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and get in here. So why pick Rakan? So Rakan was just released, I believe, like 5 days ago or so. I've probably played 5 or 6 games with him. Maybe slightly more, but I did want to go ahead and get this guide out early because I know a lot of people are curious about him and they, want to know how to optimize their play with Rakan. So we're going to go ahead and do it. Just keep in mind the small caveat that he has not been out that long at this point, that people are still experimenting with different aspects of, how he should be played, where he fits into the meta, including myself. So, if you're watching this 2 or 3 months down the line and he's played completely differently in a completely different meta, then I can't see the future. So I'm just doing the best that I can right now. But I think I have some really good stuff, some really good ideas that you can use to optimize your play. Okay, so what's up with Rakan? Well, he's one of the most difficult supports to play correctly. He's very mobile if you're around allies. He kind of lacks mobility if you're not around allies, so he can get caught out. But he's very mobile around allies. However, he has no defensive steroids, and all of his abilities are very close range for the most part. So that means that you're going to be really close to danger a lot, and so you have to try very carefully to dance your way around dangerous situations, which is very difficult for a lot of people to position. I mean, a lot of people have a hard time positioning, even with champions that are extremely safe, like Ezreal or even Lucian. I mean, Lucian is close range, but he has so many dashes that he, in theory, should be safe, but a lot of people still can't even be safe with them. So if you find yourself dying a lot, you can still play Rakan, but just know that you're going to have to practice him a lot to get his positioning correct, because it's easy to get baited into bad situations with Rakan, and I'll show you why here in a little bit. But he has things that make it look like he could be a really strong, engaged champion, team fight engaged champion. And in some situations that's true, but in other situations you're just going to die if you try to do it. So we'll talk about when and where you should be trying to engage. But that's something that is going to be very challenging for a lot of people to get used to if they're used to engaging with like a Leona or a Nautilus or something like that that's tanky. Rakan's going to be a little bit of a different beast, okay? So if you miss position, you're probably going to die as Rakan. All right, so he has very limited peel, so he's vulnerable to assassins. So really his only peel... He's got his W, and then he has his ult, which is on a really long cooldown. And neither one of those really displace people that much. And the ult brings people close to you. So it's not exactly a stun. It's kind of like a stun, but it brings them close. So if you're trying to get away from an assassin, like, it's useful to get that burst of speed to run away. But they're going to be walking towards you when you do it. And then his W has a delay that, a lot of mobile assassins can play around pretty easily. So... if you're against something like a Fizz or a Kassadin, or maybe like a LeBlanc or something like that, he's going to have a hard time. And he can't shield himself either, and that's a big deal. His E cannot shield himself like Janna can with her E. Janna's, ultimate not only heals people, but it blows people back really far. So if you're used to playing something like Janna and you want to try out Rakan, you need to be much, much more careful with your positioning. Janna's extremely forgiving. With her positioning. You can be out of position a lot and save yourself as Janna. And you can try to save allies who are out of position a lot and still get away without dying. With Rakan, no. If you try to go in and save somebody and they're dying, you're going to die too, the vast majority of the time. But, so he has those kind of weaknesses or difficulties about him, but he also has probably the highest combination of shielding and CC in the game. So his shields in combination with plus healing and with AP, are some of the best shields in the game. And then he does have very good crowd control for close quarters combat and a large team fight. So you just have to be very careful how you use it. Okay, so his common position in the meta right now, I think, like, where would you actually pick him? I think if Lulu has to be banned for you to pick him. If Lulu's up, you have to pick Lulu. If you can play her at all, you have to pick Lulu, because you don't want the enemy team to get Lulu, and she's very powerful, you know, in and of herself. This is patch 7.8, so this might change in the future, but right now Lulu is a must pick, must ban. So if she's banned, if Zaya's on your team, you can go ahead and, if you're comfortable with Rakan, you can go ahead and pick him, because that improves her a lot. She gets an extra 20% damage on her W, which is a huge deal, and that's the main reason to do it. Now he gets to jump, you know, much further to get to her, which is nice. That allows him to escape from dangerous situations a little bit better. But if you have her on your team, then you can go ahead and pick him, probably, if you're comfortable with him, and that would be a good pick. The enemy team, otherwise, the enemy team needs to have low engage and very few assassins on their team. So if they have like a Cassidon or a LeBlanc or a Fizz, you need to be very careful. If they have something like a Hecarim, you need to be very careful. But if they don't have much engage, or they don't have many assassins, then he could be a good pick. And in general, if you need more engage than Lulu, or if you need more engage than Janna and Lulu's banned, he could be a good choice, because he can start fights. He's primarily good at being a secondary engager, but he can be a primary if your team really needs it, if you play correctly. So if you need a bit more engaged, a bit more hard crowd control than Janna, he would be a good choice. If they have the assassins, you need to pick Janna, but if they don't, then you could potentially pick Rakan. So I think that's his position. I ranked him in my 7.8 tier list as rank 3 overall, so I think Lulu's number 1, Janna's number 2, and Rakan's number 3. And Soraka's number 4. Now, Soraka in the tank meta in 7.9 might move up a couple of slots. We'll see how that plays out, but Soraka's really, really good with tanks on her team and against tanks. So she wants slow, predictable damage. I'm going to have a Soraka guide coming out soon, so be sure to check that out. But I slot him slightly ahead of Soraka right now because he just has a little bit more crowd control and fits in with a few more compositions. Like, he doesn't quite have as many conditions as Soraka. Like, Soraka is really strong, like probably the strongest support in the right circumstances, but if she's not in the right circumstances, it can be really rough. So she's okay into almost anything, but she has an even harder time against assassins and engage than Rakan does. So I think he's comfortably in the top tier, though. So maybe not quite as high as Janna and Lulu universally, but I think he has his place, where he could be picked instead of Janna in some instances, even if Janna's up, and even if the enemy might pick Janna, or they have already picked Janna. I mean, if Lulu and Janna are both banned, then he's, you know, he's the next top priority choice. So he would be your blind pick if Janna and Lulu are banned, I think, at this point. Lulu's banned a lot. Janna's still not banned that much, though. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about his abilities here really quickly. I went ahead and pulled him up. Now, I did a little bit of this in my 7.8, but I have played him a lot since then. I haven't, well, you know, 5 to 6, a lot. 5 to 6 times since then. And I had not played him at all when I made that video, so I've definitely learned some stuff over the 5 or 6 games that I've played him. So I'm going to expand on that a little bit. So I'm going to sort of rehash what I talked about there if you've already watched that in the 7.8, but I'm also going to add in some new stuff. Okay, so let's talk about his passive here. So his passive gives you a decent shield that goes down in cooldown over time. Now, damaging an enemy or champion with a basic attack or ability lowers the cooldown. I'm not sure if you get multi-hits, if this counts. So, like, if you W and knock up 3 people, if that counts as 3 seconds lower. Or if you ultimate, say, and hit 3 people with an ultimate, if that lowers it by 3 seconds. Or if it's just every time you cast a spell and hit somebody, it can only trigger once in basic attacks. So, but you usually can't really count on this. Like, it's nice if it shows up. And so that gives you a little bit more edge when you want to engage. It gives you a very small shield that can help you out. Now, the AP ratio is great. But you're not going to be able to build a lot of AP, which we'll talk about here in a second. I have tried sort of a build AP build, and it's not optimal. Okay. So it's okay, but it's not something that's really going to change your playstyle that much. You just do your thing, and sometimes you get a shield. It can happen in the middle of combat, but typically you'll just have it for the start of a fight, and you might get it once more at a random time, but you can't play around it in any real way. It just happens, so it doesn't change your gameplay at all. You don't really have to think about it. If you're recalling, Xayah can jump on your recall, or if she's recalling, you can jump on her recall. All you have to do is just walk up and press B, and then it will let you it'll let you recall with her. So make sure you press B. You can't just walk up in the circle. You have to press B also, because I messed that up before. To just make sure that both people walk up to each other and press B, and that can be very helpful. So for instance, if Xayah is just getting that last hit on a tower and you want to go ahead and recall, and she starts, and then she walks over to you and grabs you like in the last half a second, presses B, then she gets the back right then. So it's a pretty useful mechanic. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about Q a little bit here. Now, Q overall is very weak, as I've found. And the big problem with it is its range is so short. It's crazy. I don't know the exact range on it. They don't have it listed, but it feels extremely short. It's like 500. Like, I was expecting it to be a standard harassment range, you know, like of a Karma Q or something like that. I think Karma's Q... Karma's actually a pretty decent comparison. Let me pull her up really quick, because this is something that people will probably want to compare him to Karma, because Karma also has Engage, and she has sort of similar, like... She has some similarities, but like a Karma Q is 950 range. That's really far. So I wasn't expecting it to maybe be Karma Q range, but, you know, just some kind of harassment range. Like, usually most spells intended for harass are, you know, at least like 800, 700 or 800. But this thing feels like it's 400 or 500. So what that means in reality is you just can't cast this a lot on people. You can try, but you're just going to feel like it just doesn't quite reach them almost every time. And it's really frustrating because you're like, oh my god, it's so close. But it just won't hit them because it's almost no range. So it's very low range. It costs quite a bit of damage, or quite a bit of mana at level 1 for what it does. 60 mana for 70 damage is really lackluster. Whereas Karma's is 50 for 80 and has a lot longer range. Karma, of course, can empower hers, but just normal comparison at level 1. Karma's is also AoE and slows. So that's an important aspect of it, is even if you don't mantra cast it, then it still hits everyone in a small radius around. That's another important aspect of this one, is that it does not. It only hits a single target. So he has no wave clear, like almost zero. You have to use your W if you want any kind of wave clear, and that's not advisable because that's your only escape and it's your engage. So he has no wave clear. And unfortunately, this is going to keep him out of the pro meta, I believe, unless they change this. Now, if you do hit somebody, then you get a circle around you, and we'll see that in the footage here in a little bit. You get a circle around you that moves with you, and whenever you basically touch someone else, it'll heal you plus them. And you have probably 3 or 4 seconds to touch them, or it just heals you. And it heals for an amount based on your level. So if you're level 9, it heals for 83, so it doesn't matter. You could have 5 points in this, you could have 1 point in this. It would still only heal for 83, which is kind of weird. And the radius is so small, it's really hard to hit multiple targets. It says himself and surrounding allies, like it could hit multiple people. That's only in like the tightest of tight areas. Like the radius around it's like 100 or something. Like you almost literally have to walk up and like touch them to get this heal off. So it's okay. It also has a really long cooldown, 12 seconds, level 1. So I think this is by far the weakest thing on him. It has a really high ratio on the heal, but you get that regardless of how many points you put into it, and the heal doesn't change, remember, overall. So all that you get for leveling this up, so you get a longer cooldown and you get more magic damage. And at first I thought this would be like good for harassing in lane to level that up, but it's so difficult to hit people with it because it's so short range that it's really not, the cooldown's not even worth it, honestly. Like, so I would just recommend getting 1 point in this and just using it for your all-ins primarily. Just so that when you know, W somebody or you ult somebody and then just hit them with a Q and then dash back to your ally with Battle Dance, and then it'll give them a little heal. That's how I recommend using it. So I think Riot should rebalance this to some extent. I think they should make it more like a Karma Q, where it does AoE damage. They dial back the AP ratio on it a little bit. Now it doesn't do AoE, like, don't change the healing or anything. I do think actually the healing should be per level, like per point that you put in this, rather than based on your overall level. I think that's really a goofy mechanic for this, because like this seems like it should be the spammable thing that you use in lane, and usually that's something that Riot wants you to level like 2 or 3 points in. But I think they should just across the board like lower his AP ratios on almost everything and make a couple of changes. And one of the changes I would recommend is making the damage AoE in a very small area, just like Karma, just so that you could actually push waves a little bit, because that's so important in pro play. And I think that's going to keep him out of pro play. Now, the worry there is, well, what if they go middle lane with him? Well, if you nerf the AP ratios enough, then they won't do it. Or it'll be kind of lackluster. So you've already got Karma and Lulu that go into the middle lane, like, very, very rarely. But just lower the AP ratio, just knock it to the dirt to where, you know, if they don't want him to go middle or top, just knock it to the dirt, and then just make his base damages respectable and just make it to where he can wave clear. So I think that's a big thing that they could do here. So I don't think that would be too disruptive, but that's what I would recommend. However, as it currently stands, just get 1 point in Q. It's a really weak skill. And just use it for all ends. Now, if you have a lot of AP scaling, you know, the 70 is pretty nice. But, you know, if, for example, you have Eye of the Watchers plus 25 AP in your runes plus Ardent Sensor, you know, you get a 160 AoE heal, which can heal 2 people. So that's, you know, that's pretty good. But nevertheless, that heal is not going to change regardless of how many points you put in it. So you don't need the extra damage and you don't need the extra cooldown because you're not going to be spamming it in lane, I don't think. So just one point in Q in lane, probably level 1. Your W is pretty good engage. So it doesn't say the range on it, but it feels like it's probably like 700 range or so. It's got nice range and it has a pretty wide hitbox. So I'm pretty sure you can engage further than you can with Alistar. It's at least as far as Alistar, if not further. We'll put it that way. And the hitbox on it is wider than Alistar. But Alistar's is like instant. When you go in there and pound the ground, it's instant, knocks people up. This has a small delay. And it doesn't tell you how much that dramatic pause is, but I feel like it's at least 1/4 of a second. So it can feel kind of clunky against champions that have mobility. So like Lucian, Ezreal, Fizz, anything that has a dash that can get away. Will probably dash and get away from it. People can even flash if they have to. So it's a little bit harder to land than Alistar. However, it does cost a lot less mana to give it a whirl. And the cooldown, once you level it up all the way, is, I think, comparable to Alistar to some extent. Now, the damage does go up. Doesn't matter that much. But it's basically a single point W that does very similar things to what Alistar WQ does. It's, you know, doesn't do quite as much damage, and it has a little bit more counterplay to it, but you only have to use 1 skill for it, and it's a lot less mana, so that's really helpful. Alistar is also a lot tankier than Rakan is, which we'll talk about in a second, but basically, you know, you want to be very careful, so you can engage, but do not jump into an area where you're going to get vaporized in a large team fight. So you want to try to use this as follow-up. So after people have already blown their major area of effect cooldowns in a team fight, then you go in and you help everybody clean them up. So do not use a W, you know, into that Caitlyn when she's surrounded by, you know, a Fizz and a Kali, a Nautilus, and some other stuff. You're gonna die. So just be very, very careful with this engage. It's good, but he's not a traditional engage champion because he has no defense. So beware. Like, I'm telling you now, when you're learning him, you'll probably die a lot because it'll feel like you want to engage, but you can't. Or you should not, because you might die. So in smaller, you know, like 2-on-2 in lane or something, sure. If you can hit both people up, or even if you can hit the major damage dealer up, sure. But in 5-on-5s, you need to be very, very cautious. Okay, so the shield. This is what you should max up at all times. I thought that maybe, like I said, 3 points in Q could be worth it if this was 700 range, just for the extra damage and harass and lower cooldown. It is not. Do not do it. Just get the E in lane. It's really, really powerful, and it gets a lot less cooldown. Right? The cooldown is a lot less as you go through. It's 2 seconds, not just 1, but 2 seconds less every time, which is huge. It does cost more mana, but it only costs a single mana per usage, and the double shield is massive. So 190 on the shield. That's about the same as Karma. In fact, it is the same as Karma, right? Shield 190. Now Karma's is on a lower cooldown. It's 8 seconds instead of 12, but it costs 80 mana for that one shield, and you can only do it once every 8 seconds. This costs 100 mana, and you get to do it twice every 12 seconds. So that's a really big deal. And the total is 380 shield with a 1.6 AP ratio, which is disgusting. Like, that's so good. And you can recast it within 5 seconds for no cost. When you cast it the first time, the cooldown starts ticking. So if you cast it once and then you cast it again at 7 seconds, there's only going to be 7 seconds left before you can use it again. So it feels like it's up a lot. But yeah, you get to double cast it. You get to jump around. Now, the range on this is very low if it's not Xayah. It feels like it's like 400 or something. It's extremely low. So that's another thing where Janna and Karma, the ranges are like 800 on their shields. They can cast their shield from a very safe distance and hang out in the back. He has to not only jump right up to somebody to shield them, but he also like has to be pretty close to them to begin with. So this will feel really clunky when you start, that you have to be pretty close to get that jump off, except on Xayah. It's really far on Xayah. It's like 900 on Xayah or something. But on everybody else, it's really low. So just be careful with that. So this is a really, really powerful shield in the game. So yeah, you definitely want to max this out and use it appropriately. Because you can reposition with this, and you can also, like I said, it just has a big shield. But, and one of the big things also with this is it does not shield yourself. It only shields your ally. So this is kind of like a Lee Sin shield that doesn't help you out at all. So I think a good thing to balance would be, once again, knock this down. Like, make this shield ratio like 0.4, maybe even 0.3 would be fine. Make this to like 0.4. Like, just lower the ratio on it, and then make it shield yourself. So even if you have to lower this to like 150 or something like that, just make it shield yourself in addition to the other person. And that would, you know, dramatically help out with his defensive steroids. Even if it's like the second time you cast it, you get a shield on yourself. Like, maybe even if it's not every time you cast it, you get to refresh that shield. But just something with the balance team, they need to make it to where it shields yourself too, so that you can actually get in there and soak up some hits. I think, personally. And once again, if they're afraid of someone going middle with this, just lower the AP ratio. Boom, instant fix. Okay. So it is good as is, but it would be nice if it gave you some kind of shield, a personal shield, when you did it to someone else. Kind of like a Lee Sin shield. Okay. Now his R is excellent. So basically you just run at people with this. You get 50% bonus movement speed, which is great. And whenever you touch somebody, then they get charmed and they walk towards you for however long. 1 second, 1.25, or 1.5. Which isn't that long, but that's still a pretty good chunk, and it does very little magic damage. But it is on a really low cooldown, so you can use this a lot. Like, you can roam with this, and it should be up almost every team fight if you're getting a decent chunk of CDR. So I think it's definitely really powerful. Once again, this requires you to run up and basically be in melee with everybody, so you want to make sure that you don't get blown up when you're trying to do this. The absolute best way to use this, I think, is to shield your tank that's in the middle. After everyone uses all their crowd control, you dive in, shield the tank who's soaked all the damage, the initial damage, cast your R, run into like 3 or 4 people, however many you can get. They will naturally clump up around you, because when they're charmed, they walk towards you. So they're going to clump up around you, and then you W, and that lets you hit like 3 or 4 of them up in a row, which is really nice. You'll see some of this in the footage that I show here in a little bit. But that's really the best way to do it, I think, is if you can, shield to get close to enemies, and then shield an ally, and then R, hit them all, and then use your W. You can W and knock people up, and then charm them afterwards. That's good for like a 2-on-2 engagement. Because that makes sure like you get to be the one who engages, and that makes sure that you charm them both pretty much automatically with your R. Just make sure you don't stack your crowd control if you do that. But, you know, in a large team fight where everybody is spread out, it's harder to get people grouped up like that. So the charm helps bring people, rein them in, so that you can get a huge W afterwards. So either way is fine, but I would do the W plus R for smaller engagements, and then R, then W for the larger scale fights. Okay. You can also use the charm to escape. So if someone's chasing you, or you run in and people start going after you, like once you touch somebody, you get this massive move speed. You get 50% bonus move speed for, you know, typically, but then it goes up to 200% after you touch the first person. So if someone's chasing you in the jungle or something, you know, you can W them and then R them with this and then run away, and they're not going to catch you. You're just too fast, typically. And like I said, it's on a low cooldown, so you can use it a lot, which is really, really nice. Okay, so for the strength, so he has a lot of crowd control. He has very high shielding, as we just talked about. That is the highest shielding in the game for a single target ability. I mean, like I said, it's a 380 with a 1.6 shield. And I did some math here on it. Let's see. Yeah. 380 with a 1.6 shield. If you have Eye of the Watchers plus Wind Speakers plus 25 AP runes or whatever, then you have a 667 shield, which is just massive. So even if you don't do a lot with that, you know, 1.6 ratio, it still is going to be pretty dang high. So it's a really, really heavy shield on a pretty low cooldown once you get some CDR. So very, very powerful. So his shielding is excellent. He has really high AP scaling. You're not going to be able to get a lot of AP with the current itemization, unfortunately. If Riot makes a change where they make Redemption and Locket mutually exclusive, which is what they should do, one champion can only have one of those and not both on a team, then you could go Redemption plus Ardent Censer, and you might be able to get some AP off of that. Then after that, you could go like Abyssal Scepter or something. So he's great with AP with those ratios. You just can't build it most of the time if you're looking for optimal builds. Let's see. So nice AP scaling, but you're just not going to be able to get a lot of AP, unfortunately. Excellent for AoE compositions. So, you know, if you have a Misfortune on your team or an Amumu or just anything else that does a lot of area of effect damage, a Riven, Graves, because he piles everyone together with that charm and then knocks them all up, and it makes it very easy to hit everyone with your ultimates. So that's quite powerful. And then he has really good mobility around allies, so he can jump to allies, even though it's only 400 range. That's still quite a few little dashes that you can do to get away from threats or to reposition. And then, of course, his W allows him to dash and get away as well. So allows him to, basically gives him a little flash. Okay, so his weaknesses are, he requires excellent game knowledge, so you really have to know when you can go all in and when you can't. This is just going to take a lot of practice and just knowledge of how much damage different champions can do with different items. So he is a lot squishier than your standard engaged champion like an Alistar or a Nautilus, and those are already pretty squishy when they have Redemption. So you need to be very, very careful and just really understand when you can and when you can't go in, and it just takes practice and just knowledge. But I would just say, in general, do not be the first person in unless it's a 2-on-2 fight. You want to be the follow-up person. So, you know, whenever your Shyvana runs in and everyone starts focusing her, then you go in with your W. Or whenever Eve's running up to flank him from behind, wait till she lands her hit and then you go in. So wait until people use their abilities on somebody else and then go in, because you're just not going to be able to build tanky items either. So that's problematic. Now, yeah, very, very squishy, no defensive steroids. He's weak to engage in CC, so if you get crowd control, you get feared by Fiddlesticks, if you get polymorphs by Lulu, if you get grabbed by Nautilus, you're going to be in big trouble probably. Or if, you know, that Hecarim runs you over, or Trendamir just keeps running at you with his Undying Rage, it can be very hard to deal with that as Rakan, so be careful with that. Then also he has very low wave clear, so it's a high probability you're going to get pushed into a tower early on, and that's going to make it more difficult for your AD carry to CS, and your tower is going to take a bit more aggro. So in that sense, he's kind of like Janna, where he really shines in the mid to late game team fights, particularly. Now, if you have a really good aggressive early game AD carry, then he can play well. So you can engage, you know, you can do a W and have a Kate set a trap under somebody, or a really nasty combo at level 6 is you can Callista, I guess you would W in, knock him up, Callista can pull you in with her ult, then you knock him up again, and then you charm him, and that's like 4 or 5 seconds of crowd control. So that's really sick. That combo is really nice. So there are some combos and some lane matchups where you can get very aggressive. You have that option. But you know, you just have to be a little bit more cautious than other more traditional tanks. So his matchups, I think he's really good with Xayah, obviously, primarily because you give her an extra 20% damage on her W. But overall, she also has the crowd control where if you knock people up with the W, she can throw the feathers all over them and then pull them back in to bind them, and then you can ult and tag them all. So she has some pretty good crowd control and pretty nice burst damage, especially if you build her correctly. Do not build Bork on Xayah. Let me go ahead and throw that out there right now. Don't do it. Either go Essence Reaver or IE plus an attack speed item. So just go BF into attack speed item into either Essence Reaver or IE. She has so much scaling with her AD. I mean, let me just pull this up just really quickly. I know this isn't a Xayah one, but I just want to mention this because there's so many times where people just keep building Bork on her that I've seen lately in solo queue. And so this is like a public service announcement here. She scales really hard with crit on her E, right? So every 0.5%, every 1% crit you have is 0.5% extra damage. So if you do 20%, or if you have 50% critical strike off of like 2 crit items, then you do 25% extra damage with this ability, which is most of your damage is this ability. It's really, really strong. In addition to getting a lot of attack speed and move speed, and overall in general, she just scales really, really hard with crit. So you need to build crit on her. And I talk about this in my 7.8 video at the very beginning. If you haven't watched that yet, go check that out, especially the beginning. I talk about Xayah and Rakan to some extent. And the Xayah, my Xayah opinion hasn't really changed that much. I think she's a top 5 AD carry. Rakan changed a little bit. He's still really strong, but you know, I have favored, you know, leveling the E over the Q in lane. There's been a few things about Rakan that have changed since I made that video, but Xayah is basically the same in that you should be maxing your E, and you should be building a lot of crit. So you should have Essence Reaver. I still think that Infinity Edge is really good too, but Essence Reaver does make some sense because she does have really nice cooldowns, and she can have mana problems if you're using her abilities a lot. So either way, not Bork. Okay, so obviously Rakan's going to be very good with Xayah. Kalista, very good with Rakan for that interaction that I just mentioned where you can get the double knockup. It's a great chain of stuff there. And then also, you know, if you just shield her, she's such an awesome hyper carry that if you just shield and protect her, she's going to take over the game. So, really nice. With Draven, pretty good. I mean, Draven's good with just about anybody, but that's a lane where you can go aggressive, so you can, you know, W knock somebody up, and Draven will probably be able to beat him up. If you just W, Q them, and then hop back to Draven, almost nobody can trade back with that. So that's super powerful. And I think he's, and Draven's also lane dominant, so because you don't have much push, Draven does. So that kind of balances out to where you're not going to get pushed in a tower if you're a Draven, most likely, because he wants to keep autoing the wave so that he catches more spinning axes. So Draven naturally pushes, and that's good because Rakan does not. So that'll balance you out. Caitlyn is another one. She also has great push early on, so that kind of counterbalances for Rakan's weak push. And if you knock somebody up with the W, Caitlyn could put a trap underneath them, and that sets up for a really nasty combo. Like anytime Caitlyn hits a trap, it's a ton of damage. If you've never noticed this, if you've ever thought like, why is Caitlyn so good? Look at some of these numbers, and do not build Bork on Caitlyn too, please. Like, just get crit. But if you hit someone up with a Rakan W, or you have any kind of guaranteed crowd control, which Rakan W's pretty close to guaranteed if it's an immobile AD carry. Rakan is best against immobile AD carry, so we'll talk about that here in just a second, stuff he's good against, but things like Kog'Maw, Twitch, Jhin, Varus, Ashe, anything that doesn't have really good escapes, they're not going to be able to get out of his W unless they flash. So he's really good against them. But if you knock him up, it's going to put the, it's going to give you a free headshot, which is going to be an additional, you know, 70% AD plus this flat number in addition to your normal headshot mechanic, which is right here. Deals 50% plus a lot of extra crit, bonus physical damage. So what happens, a good Caitlyn, if you knock up, she's probably going to set a trap. As soon as you get trapped, she's going to headshot you for that bonus off of the Yordle Snap Trap, which is just an obscene amount of damage, especially once you get a BF sword. It can critical strike, so I'm pretty sure it can critical strike. Yes. So it can critical strike. It has 13 or 1200 range. It can crit. So all of this crazy damage modifier stuff on here and on the Yordle Snap Trap is all on your auto attack. So it does let you critically strike this. And so, you know, if you get some crit, this can hit somebody, you know, even with a BF sword and like a Zeal, you know, it can hit people for like 1,000 or something. It's ridiculous. And so Snap Trap, headshot somebody, and then you auto or you net backwards, and while you're in the middle of your net cast animation, then you press Q, you hit him with the net, you hit him with the Q, that sets him up for another headshot, and then you headshot him again at the end. And so that entire combo, if you've ever seen that with a good Caitlyn, will just like delete someone's bar. They'll take like 70 or 80% of their health and damage. So Caitlyn is very, very good. Really high burst damage early on if you're good with her. So Rakan facilitates that because his knockup is just an easy free trap that Caitlyn can land. Just be sure that you ping it before you go in so that Caitlyn knows and she's ready to put a trap there. If she doesn't put a trap, if she's like just an average Caitlyn, then she might at least throw a Q and hit him with a Q there. Okay, so all of these are very good because they can be lane dominant early on, and they just have really good interactions with Rakan. So Rakan is particularly good against things that can't really engage reliably onto him early, and that don't have a lot of damage early on, and that he can hit pretty easily with his W. So Thresh and Braum come to mind. You can just outscale them. You don't have to do anything fancy in that lane. Against Soraka, Cog, or Twitch, you can actually get on them with your W. And yeah, so you can double as you can play chill if you're against a tank and just outscale them, or you can play aggressive, especially if you have one of these 80 carries. You can play aggressive early and punish the immobile scaling champion. So he can go either way. He's not really that great with Cog, Twitch, Jinx, or Ezreal. All of these lose lane. I mean, Kog'Maw is like okay in lane early, but the rest of them are prone to lose lane early, and they're prone to get pushed in. And you just don't have enough peel later in the game for them, for a bunch of people that are diving him. So, I mean, he can still work with those champions. It's not like it's game over, except for Ezreal. It's always game over if you get an Ezreal on your team. I say that like half jokingly, but I'm mostly serious. But like you can still win just off the raw power of Twitch, Kog'Maw, and Jinx to a lesser extent. But it's just going to be a little bit harder. If you see one of these, you really should pick Janna instead, because you're going to need extra peel. So he's not great against things that can engage onto him and have a lot of crowd control. So like Leona, Alistar, Nautilus, Hecarim, Kassadin, Fizz, all of these things are very bad news for him because he can't really defend himself. He defends other people, but he relies on his mobility and, you know, capability to dodge around to avoid damage. And it's really hard to avoid some of these champions and their damage. Okay, so standard items, mobility boots, redemption, locket, ruby sightstone. I mean, that's just the same thing on every single champion. I had tried going ardent sensor first because the AP is so good on him. But you really need that redemption and locket. Like, redemption is absolutely a must, and then locket you pretty much need because you have to have that defense or you're just going to die in a team fight. In addition to your team needs that defense, or they're probably going to die in a team fight. So I think you just have to go with the standard build and then pick up Ardent Sensor later. I mean, other cute items that I would like to see more viable on him would be like Abyssal Scepter, and even something like an Athene's could be okay. I don't know. His Q, like I thought his Athene's might be better if his Q was a bit stronger, but it's really weak. So I don't know. Athene sounds interesting on him, but there's just not room for it. So this is pretty much your standard build. Your sixth item probably should be a control ward slot most of the time. If you have a little bit of extra room, you could maybe get a Mikhail's or an Abyssal Scepter, depending on what your team needs. Now, this is 7.8. Once again, the itemization is going to change in 7.9, but for now, that's what I think you should get. You have a couple of rune options. I go ahead and go for flat AP You can go for more CDR or defensive items. If Fiddle's good against melee supports, but I mean, he can be good against other things. But yeah, he has problems against poke. Just to answer Johnny's question, I'll answer it later. But so I have been trying this out, and this was when I was going for more of the, you know, Eye of the Watchers, Ardent Sensor build. This is still good early. It depends on the matchup, really. If you're going to fight them early on, you know, if you have the Callista or the Draven, you can probably go with the AP, and that'll give you some bigger shields early on. Bigger heals and things like that. However, if you're not, you might just want to go for my standard page of like CDR blues to give you that extra 7.5% CDR because he really needs it. His abilities have really long cooldowns. And with the Quints, you might just want to go for like a couple of armor Quints, maybe even all armor Quints, or maybe like 1 or 2 armor Quints and the rest move speed Quints to help you out. So, and it should always be Windspeaker. Any champion that's going to get Redemption and Locket, especially if it has shields, needs to do Windspeaker. So you have your shield here, and you have your heal that benefits, and you have your shield up here. All of these benefit from Windspeakers. So you definitely want to go Windspeakers on him, even though it does make him a little bit more susceptible. Like, I don't know, maybe like you could go Courage on him would be the only other thing, but you're not going to be getting that much HP. So Courage is not going to give you that much. I think Windspeakers. Windspeakers is just so strong. I mean, I talk about it in my 7.8. Once again, there's a lot of good stuff in 7.8. If you haven't watched it yet, my 7.8 patch notes video. It's way more than just patch notes and other such things. But I talk about Windspeakers here. I do an in-depth special section about it. Just look in the time description if you want to see it. But basically, Windspeakers at level 14 in a team fight gives you about 3,000 gold worth of stats. People forget that Windspeakers gives you armor and magic resist. Everyone, armor and magic resist on your team that gets shielded or healed. So that's really powerful in addition to giving the extra plus 10% healing. So it's really, really powerful option. So you can go Courage if you're the primary engage on your team, I guess, which is not a good place to be in as Rakan. You should have picked a different support probably, like a Nautilus if you wanted to be primary engage, but it's okay. But I think in like 99% of circumstances, you need to go Windspeaker. Okay, so let's talk about how to lane. I'm actually doing very well with time. Usually these guides go really long, but I'm trying to keep them to about an hour. So only pick Rakan in a very specific matchups. As I talked about again, you need to not be the primary engage. Lulu needs to be banned, and you need to think, well, I need a bit more secondary or follow-up engage than what Janna can offer me. Or I need a little bit more hard crowd control than what Janna can offer me. So it's a small window where you would pick him right now, or Xayah if you have Xayah on your team. So he can be amazing, but he has a hard time against assassins and hard engage. So if you don't need excessive peel, then he might be a good choice. If you don't quite need the peel of Janna, he could be a good choice. So you can play him in 2 different styles, like I mentioned before. You can either play him kind of passive, like a Janna, if you have superior scaling on your team, and just chill and just set up for the mid-game and late-game team fights. Or you can play a more aggressive, like an Alistar, and go for engages and very aggressive trading in lane. So you scale harder than most other supports outside of Janna and Lulu, and maybe Soraka, because of the way that Redemption Locket and Windspeakers interacts with your own shield. But, you know, you still have good all-in potential as well. So you can use your Q for early harass. This is pretty weak. It's hard to hit. I would try to just save it for all-ins if you can. You know, your big combo is if you land your W, then Q, and then you E to an ally twice to set them up for a shield for a trade, which is really good, but it's very expensive mana-wise. At level 3, you're only going to have 389 mana, and if you use all of those abilities, that's going to be 170 mana. So that's really, really expensive. So you could only do that combination like twice, and then you'd be in lane, almost out of mana. So, but yeah, so I think in general, it might be best to wait until the enemy engages onto you, and then you counter engage onto them, or the jungler comes, or just something. But it depends on the matchup. I mean, if you're against if you have a Draven on your team or something, and you're against like a Twitch early, you might just be able to W in and then just auto him a couple of times, and then E out. You might not even need to use your Q. Oh no!
Been sitting on the counter a while. You're probably way overdue to go to dinner.
Yeah, he keeps trying to holler at me. Okay. So you don't have to do a full combo every time you go in, but in general, depending on the matchup, you might just want to chill until you get a couple of fairy charms. It just depends on the match. So I would only go for those all-in with lane-dominant champions like Draven, Callista, or Caitlyn. You know, if you have Ezreal, I mean, you might be able to do it with Lucian, but typically Lucian's going to go for Vamp Scepter early, which is really going to crimp his damage. So, you know, it just depends on what's going on, but if you once you get your ultimate, then you have a much better all-in. So you can do your ultimate single target combo would be W, Q, R, and then E back to your ally. In a multi-target situation, you would E to your ally who's close, like the tank who's engaging or the jungler, and then you R to charm people. Then you W, knock everybody up, and then you Q to get that heal in there. Hi.
Thanks for wearing that tie.
That's true. So you can use Redemption and Locket during engages to stay alive as well. So you should be using those, you know, a lot in fights, because that's one of your only ways you're going to stay alive, is if you go ahead and throw that Redemption early and then lock it to save everybody, and then you go in, and then after you use the quickness, your R, typically you want to run out. Like you quickness, hit everyone with W, and then just run out. Okay, so let's watch some footage, and I can show you how some of this plays out really quickly. So I'll show you some very basic kind of laning. We're against the Nautilus, and we have Xayah on our team. So in general, just kind of early on, you know, you just kind of have to chill in this lane, especially against Ziggs. We're against the Ziggs Nautilus, so Ziggs is going to do more damage early. As I was explaining to the stream, I'm pretty sure we're going to outscale him, so we don't have to do anything fancy. In lanes where... Now, Xayah has really good range. A lot of people are complaining, oh, she's very short range. Like, look at that range. That's like 700 range or something on her passive. Xayah is really good right now. Like, if you're a good Xayah player, and especially if you get the right items. This player, I don't believe, gets the right item. She gets Bork. But even if you get the wrong item, she's still pretty good. So yeah, Ziggs and Nautilus definitely have an early advantage. You cannot go in on that Nautilus right now. He will definitely beat you up. So, you know, we just kind of have to chill. I'm not going to show you a lot of this, but this is just kind of your playstyle pattern. Just kind of hang out in the back. Don't get hit by Nautilus, typically, early on. Okay, so you see that? Look at that. I just threw a Q. Look at this range on this Q. Alright, watch. I'm going to try to hit him with a Q in a second. When he walks up, let's see. I'm holding on to my ability point. I'm trying to think, do we want to go in or not, if I can get a good shot at the Ziggs. I decide no, we're just going to go with the shield. Alright, now watch. Okay, I'm throwing the Q at him. Look how far he is. Gleaming Quill, so it has like a very small cast time on it. Now watch where it ends. Okay, it's going to end like right here or something. Right there. So that's the range on this ability. It's from here to here. That feels like that's like 500 range. That is so short. Like that's less than most people's auto attack range. So yeah, this is what I'm talking about when I say you can't really use that ability that well. Okay, so we're going to fast forward. That's just how the laning goes. It's kind of like Janna. Like, you're not picking him for dominant laning, although he can do that in some matchups. And this one, I didn't pick him for that purpose. So let's go ahead and watch some action here. So you're just probably going to be chilling. You're going to assume like a Janna type of role here, where you just kind of chill and farm. Remember, you don't have to be guns blazing all the time with every support. It's okay to chill if you're the higher scaling comp. Like, obviously, if you get an opportunity to make a good play, that's great. But you shouldn't feel compelled like you have to do that if you are the winning lane. if you're the higher scaling lane, if you just don't die, that's a win. But let's go ahead and get to some action here. Okay, so we're just walking back to lane. We've just had our buys. We're level 6 right now. So they have a huge wave that's pushing into us. So I'm thinking, okay, there's no way we can go on this. They also have Nautilus. Now, Nautilus is only level 5 right now, but everyone else is level 6. So to me, that's kind of a red flag. He's going to hit 6 very soon. Because he hasn't died, I don't think. We haven't killed him or anything. So now he did roam up here in this jungle, and that's why he's behind. Because he roamed up to try to catch Fiddle in the jungle earlier. But I didn't think he was really that far behind. So I'm really scared that he's going to pop 6 and engage on us in the middle of this huge minion wave, and that's going to be really bad. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 minions. We only have 3. Now, she gets a pretty good hit. She hits him with 3 things. Okay, so Nautilus pulls him. I'm thinking, all right, it's go time. So you notice I was hanging out in the back before because I didn't want Nautilus to engage on me, and I thought we were just going to let it push in. That had been our pattern. But she got a decent hit there, so she wants to go. So I jump, W, knock him up. She flies up. Hits him with all of her stuff. He heals. So I jump. I think I jump to her. Now I use my ult there. Exhaust him before the bomb lands. Stun them both. Alright. Trying to go after him. Hit him with a Q. Or my heal. The heal activates on me. Shield. Shield again. Keep hitting him. Keep hitting him. Now, the reason that we lost that is because she has a Vamp Scepter instead of a BF Sword, or a Bilgewater instead of a BF Sword right now. You can't see it. I don't think I pressed tab, but if she had a BF Sword, if she just had more AD, then they were easily going to die. And she also used her E really early before she ulted. So she was saving her ult probably to dodge Nautilus, which was good, but it was okay. I mean, we still got some lane advantage, but that's just kind of how a fight would work. You just wait on them to engage into you typically, and then you try to counter-engage onto them. Now, Fiddle tries to come down, but that just ends up being a fail. Okay, so let's go up to another exciting time here. Okay, about 2,400. Let me back up a little bit. Okay, so we're trying to do a Baron here. I don't really remember why we're trying to do this Baron. I think maybe we had 1 kill. Okay, so GP throws an ult. So I jump in a shielder for a little bit of damage. I jump in a shielder again. Now I could locket that. I could have locketed that, but it was only going to hit 2 people. And I could just shield all the damage off of her. And I have so much magic resist anyways that it's not really necessary to locket that. Alright. So now they're actually going in, which I wasn't sure if we should do that or not. I mean, we don't have Fiddle. He's just like up here wave clearing. He hasn't even started moving down here yet. Alright, so I drop a Redemption. That's what's going on right here. Then I flash. Now she pulls him in with her E. So I go ahead and I flash and quickness. Charm them all. Then I press lock it. Right there. When Rumble ults, I lock it. And so that's what shields a lot of them here. Then I use my W. Knock him up. Auto him a couple of times. I should have hit him with a Q probably. I hit him with a Q right there. Give everybody a little heal. So there we go. That was pretty solid. I probably should have exhausted somebody in there, but everybody was basically dead by the time I got in there. So let's see. Oh, that's when we got it. Let me see back to 24. I'm pretty sure everyone was dead by the time I got there. So, like, when I flash in here, I mean, I could have exhausted one of those guys, but they're all dead by that point. I ran back with Zaya. I could have run forward after I shielded Zaya to help them. I didn't know they were going to go in that hard. I thought we were just going to disengage, but after the GP ult. But we just got kind of split up by the Ziggs bomb. But I ended up working out. Let's go to another one. It's going to show you a few different styles and ways you can fight these. So in that one, it was just peel back and then wait until everyone was clumped up and then follow my AD carry into the fight. Okay, so there should be something breaking out. Okay, here we go. But you notice I wasn't the front line there. I was not the Vanguard. I did not jump in first. I let everyone else use their abilities, and then I went in. Okay, so probably going to be similar here. Rumble drops his ult. Nautilus is kind of going in. Okay, shield. Shield. I locket this bomb, I'm pretty sure. Yes. So I used the locket. Shielded everybody, so really no one took any damage from the Ziggs bomb. Alright, prevented a little bit of GP. Fiddlesticks goes in by himself here. Darius is TPing on top of this. Okay, he cancels his TP. Shield. Get another shield off. Okay, we push in. So that was pretty good. Just lock it, peeling back once again. Now this is one that I kind of want to show because this was kind of a goof. This is what happens if you try to go in as sort of the primary engager as Rakan here in a second. So we probably should have left. The only reason that I really kind of elected to stay was I still had redemption. I think it just came up. And I figured, you know, we can get one tower here if we heal. Because we just killed a lot of them, but it's still pretty early in the game. Okay, so Warwick starts hitting the Darius, and so I think, okay, I'm going to follow up. Hit this. Alright, then I'm going to use the quickness. I'm going to tag this Ziggs. I don't even know. Something slows me here. Oh, I hit one Zig bomb. That's what it was. If I hadn't hit that Zig bomb, I would have gotten out. But that was just trying to be too aggressive under tower. I'll show a couple more here. Oh, that's a bit late. Okay, so Fiddlesticks is setting up for stuff. I'm trying to reposition, so I got cut off. Okay, Fiddle's going. So I'm just like, okay, what do? I got to get in there. So I just walk up, flash the wall, quickness, run in, tag, 1, 2, knock up Nautilus. I couldn't go too far forward. They have a lot of zones. So they have like a GP ult, GP barrels, Rumble ult, Rumble Flame Spitter, like Ziggs Minefield, Ziggs ult. So this is a pretty rough matchup for Rakan. There's just a lot of zones of control that I can't run through. Like right now I have a minefield on top of me. So I lock it, the Ziggs bomb, walk out. There's the Rumble ult really late. But yeah, I just had to go in and quickness and just hit whoever I could hit. So you notice I didn't try to run all the way through to hit the Ziggs because there's just too much area of effect magic going on. If I'd run through all of that, I definitely would have died. So I just tried to hang out kind of near the back and just try crowd control whoever I could. And then finally, okay, so I W'd out of that. Okay, so let's see. 39, 45. I think this is the last fight. Alright, so we see him setting up. Fiddle's going to want to ult here. Okay. Okay, so I W. Now I E to shield. Lock it, everybody. Already have my R going. Alright, so they exhaust me. I tag 3 people here. W, knock up, 3 of them, triple knock up. Should have exhausted somebody, the Rumble. This is one of my early games on Rakan. Like I said, I only had 5 games, so this is what happens sometimes when you play newer champs or champs you don't have experience on. You'll forget things. Like I could have redemption, I should have redemption in here faster. I should have exhausted somebody. I could have leveled this up in the middle of the fight. Okay, now there's redemption coming in. That's still a pretty good redemption. I think I'm still going to die. But yeah, overall pretty solid. I exhausted really late. Should have exhausted the Rumble faster. So, like I said, I did make a couple of mistakes with redemption and exhaust here, but I think overall that's the different styles of patterns that you can do with Rakan. In terms of peeling, staying back, or running in with your ultimate, trying to herd everyone together so that you can get a nice W. I died for it that time, but it killed the rest of them, helped my team win the fight. So ultimately, it was probably worth if I'd positioned a little bit better, if I'd run away after that ult, if I'd like E to somebody to get away from that Darius, I potentially could have lived. But that's what I'm saying about Rakan, though. He's really high skill cap, and if you goof up, you're gonna die. So it did work out. We did win the game. But it takes a lot of practice to get the hang of how you can go in there and, get all your crowd control in and get out alive. So that's challenging to do sometimes. So the team fight, I just described it pretty much. You just want to primarily hang out in the back and shield for priority people, so your AD carry or some other kind of mage in the back. And just use your W just to peel like tanks or different things that are trying to dive them. Don't jump into an AoE massacre. So that was... that was a game that was really dangerous because they had Ziggs and Rumble and GP who all have tons of area of effect damage. And so I think managing that was challenging to do at times, but I managed to pull it off okay in some of those fights. Yeah, so just wait on the enemies to use some of that crowd control and then jump into the fray with your R and W if you have to. So you should be the follow-up CC, not the primary one in most fights. So Fiddlesticks was starting those fights, and then I was going in, while everyone was confused about the Fiddlesticks, I was going in and cleaning people up. So just make sure to use your redemption and locket. I think I did pretty well on my locket usage, but my redemption could have definitely been better in some of those fights. I should have cast a lot earlier, but I think my locket usage was pretty on point. Locket's a lot easier to use than redemption because you just point, click, do it, whereas redemption has a 2.5 second delay on it. So, yeah, I mean, just remember that if you do ult plus redemption, it's going to be an auto hit for allies and enemies. So, or I should say for enemies. Well, not really. I mean, it's only like a 1 second, but that is a good combo where if you knock someone up in the air, if you redemption and then go in with the quickness and then knock people up in the air, it's really hard for them to get out of that in time. So, okay, that's going to be it. Did we keep it to about an hour? That's close, pretty close. So thank you very much. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Be sure to stay tuned for more Rakan action. I'll link a playlist in the description when I get a few more Rakan games under my belt loaded up. But yeah, I think he can be really powerful. He's a ton of fun. Like I said, I think he's probably in my top 3 right now. So if Lulu's banned and Janna just doesn't seem like a perfect fit, if you need some more follow-up engage, then he could be awesome. Remember, he's not a good substitute if you need a full tank engage, but he is pretty good if you already have a tank and you just need some follow-up engage. So anyways, thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.